Just one spoonful, honey. Chef Julian Thorne's voice echoed in the gleaming, sterile kitchen of the Gilded Spoon, a space that felt more like an operating room. In front of him, his 8-year-old daughter Lily shook her head. Her small hand gently pushed away the plate of pan-seared cod. Look, the skin is so crispy, Julian coaxed, his voice pleading. I heard it crackle when I cut it. Remember? Lily remained silent. She picked up a crayon and began to doodle aimlessly on a napkin. Julian sighed, his patience wearing thin. Lily, please. The doctor said you have to eat. I'm not hungry, she whispered, a familiar reply, her eyes fixed on the paper. You don't have to be hungry, Julian said, his voice softening, laced with anguish. Just tell me what it tastes like. Salty, bland, anything? His only answer was the steady scratch of the crayon. Lily was completely lost in her own world, a world devoid of flavor, a world that even the dishes her father had dedicated his life to creating couldn't reach. Julian leaned back in his chair, a wave of defeat washing over him. So, what are you drawing? He asked, a final attempt to connect. Lily didn't look up, her voice barely audible. Mommy. Lily's whispered answer was like a switch, silencing every sound in the vast kitchen. Julian froze, all efforts to coax his daughter into eating vanishing. He instinctively leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the flimsy napkin. Beneath the child's scrawled lines was a woman with long flowing hair and a radiant smile, a smile he would never forget. That smile pulled him out of the cold kitchen, yanking him back to that fateful afternoon 6 months ago. The memories flooded back, cruelly vivid. It was that same smile. Isabel's smile, his wife's, as she turned to look at Lily in the back seat. How's today's raspberry tart, little expert? Isabel asked. Lily, then a lively girl with 2 pigtails, was sucking on a jam-stained finger. The best in the world, she chirped, sweet and tart, like a fairy's kiss. Julian, at the wheel, chuckled. Where did you learn that? Mommy says every dish has a story, Lily grinned. A sudden, blinding flash of light at the bend, the screech of tires, and then darkness. The first thing Julian felt when he woke up was the smell of antiseptic. The next was a gaping hole in his chest when the doctor informed him Isabel hadn't made it. But the tragedy didn't end there. A few days later, as he tried to coax his daughter to eat a spoonful of chicken soup, the kind Isabel used to make, Lily obediently swallowed it. How is it, honey? Is it good? He hoped. Lily looked at him, her eyes wide, bewildered. It doesn't taste like anything, Dad. What do you mean? It's like plain water. And that's when he understood. The horrific shock had not only taken Lily's mother, it had also locked the last door connecting her to a world of memories and joy, her sense of taste. From then on, every meal became a torment. She refused everything, her body growing thinner, weaker. A thick sadness settled in her eyes, replacing the vibrancy of a child who once found a fairy tale in the sweet and sour taste of raspberries. Julian looked down at the perfect, now cold, cod on the table, then back at the drawing of his smiling wife in his daughter's hand. He realized the bitter truth. He could cook any dish in the world, but he couldn't cook back the taste of happiness for his daughter. Outside the opulent stillness of that kitchen, a frantic chase was unfolding under the flickering yellow lights of the alley night market. Stop, you little brat! The furious shout of the security guard hit Leo's back like a shove. The 12-year-old didn't dare look back, only kept running, his skinny hands gripping the handle of an old pushcart. The wheels shrieked and screeched on the damp pavement, a piercing alarm. His lungs burned, but the thudding footsteps behind him wouldn't let him slow down. Turning into a narrow alley, he made a mistake. A tall brick wall loomed, blocking his escape. Dead end. The guard's footsteps grew closer and closer. Panicked, Leo's eyes darted everywhere, searching for a gap, an escape, anything. And he saw it. A dark, gaping space under a chain-link fence where it met the wall of a large building. With no other option, Leo summoned all his strength, pushing the cart hard to squeeze through the opening. The metal, scraping against the ground, made a jarring sound. He quickly wedged himself through right after, hearing the fabric of his shirt tear with a sharp rip. "You little punk." The helpless curses echoed from the other side of the fence. Safe from the guard, a new, undefined fear urged Leo to keep running. He pulled his cart deeper into the darkness until all that remained was the frantic thumping of his heart and his own ragged breaths. He leaned against the wall to catch his breath. The wall was cool and smooth, not the damp, mossy brick and mortar of the market alley. He took a deep breath, and the air filling his lungs no longer smelled of garbage and sewers. Instead, there was a strange aroma, a faint scent of herbs, clean earth, and something rich, luxurious, wafting through the air. As his breathing slowly steadied, Leo's eyes adjusted to the darkness. He realized he wasn't in the market alley anymore. Beneath his feet were neatly laid flagstones. Around him were lush, potted herb plants, neatly arranged. This was the backyard of somewhere, a place so clean and orderly it was almost intimidating. The brief relief of escaping the chase immediately vanished, replaced by an even greater anxiety. He was an intruder, a dirty street kid in an impeccably tidy space. Survival instinct kicked in. Leo quickly pulled his pushcart, stealthily making his way to the darkest corner, pressing himself into the thick shadows behind several enormous, spotless blue trash bins. He held his breath, trying to become one with the night. Huddled in the darkness, Leo held his breath, listening. He just hoped no one would discover him until morning. But then, a soft sound unexpectedly broke the market's cacophony. A gentle click, followed by a rectangular strip of light cast from a glass door cutting across the dark yard. Leo's heart jumped. He pressed himself closer to the cold trash bin, peeking through a gap to observe. A man in a crisp white chef's uniform stepped out, placing a plate on a small iron table in the garden. Immediately after, a little girl shuffled out. The man said something very softly, then went back inside, leaving the girl alone in the yard. From his hidden spot, Leo watched. She was a little girl, perhaps only 8 years old, younger than him, wearing a pretty nightgown. She sat down on the chair, but not facing the plate of food. She sat with her back to it, motionless, like a small statue, staring intently at the neatly trimmed bushes. Curiosity overcame fear. What was this girl doing out here alone at this hour? Leo noticed that on the table, next to the white ceramic plate, with what looked like a work of art, were a piece of paper and a pencil. The girl didn't touch the gleaming silver fork. Instead, her small hand picked up the pencil, indifferently sketching vague lines on the paper. He was a street kid. He knew hunger well. The gnawing hunger in his belly, the hunger that made people do anything for a crust of bread. But he had never seen anyone sit before such a lavish plate of food and completely ignore it. Then a gentle breeze wafted through, stirring the girl's hair, and for a moment, under the soft light spilling from inside the house, Leo clearly saw her face. He saw her large, but empty eyes. He saw a profound sadness, a heavy loneliness that even a child like him could feel. It wasn't like the fatigue after a long day of hawking wares, or the fear of being chased. It was a sadness that came from within. A sadness that made the beautiful garden and the delicious food around her meaningless. For the first time that night, Leo forgot he was on the run. He just stared at the girl. He had been hungry, cold, scared, but he had never felt so alone. She had everything, yet she looked as if she had nothing at all. The sight touched something deep within him, a sudden and powerful empathy. Leo continued to watch the girl from the darkness, an indescribable feeling swelling in his chest. He murmured to himself, his voice just loud enough for him to hear. Poor kid. He glanced at the perfect plate of food on the table, then back at her lonely expression. Such good food. And she's just drawing. He shook his head softly. She looks sadder than I do when I'm hungry. A sudden and strong urge rose within him. He couldn't just stand there and watch. I have to do something, he told himself. Very softly, almost soundlessly, Leo backed away and rummaged in his pushcart. He pulled out the last donut of the day, a slightly misshapen star-shaped pastry he had saved for his own dinner. This is all I have left, he whispered, looking at the donut wistfully. But then his eyes drifted towards the girl in the garden, and his hesitation vanished. Oh well, it's for her. But just giving a plain donut would be boring. I have to make it a little special, Leo decided. He placed the donut on a clean piece of paper. With a tiny knife, he carefully cut 2 points of the star. Then, he skillfully attached the 2 cut pieces to the top of the donut, forming 2 funny long ears. The original misshapen star suddenly transformed into a comical animal face. Still not satisfied, he pulled out his secret weapon, a ketchup bottle. He used the tip of a toothpick to carefully dot 2 red eyes, then drew a big, cheerful smile underneath. In a few seconds, the cold donut had become a funny character, imperfect, but full of life. It wasn't a sophisticated Michelin star dish. It had no complex aromas. It was just a simple food game, created from the sincere heart and creativity of a street boy. Leo admired his creation, a faint smile on his lips. All right, he took a deep breath, gathering his courage. Now, how do I give it to her? Leo took a deep breath, his heart thumping in his chest. He couldn't just walk straight out there. He had to do this secretly. He looked around, assessing the distance. From his dark corner to the base of the girl's table was a smooth, tiled patio. Perfect. He placed the smiling donut on the paper liner, knelt low to the ground. He mumbled like a prayer. Please, work. Then, with a gentle but decisive flick of his wrist, he pushed the paper, sending it gliding across the tiles. The paper slid silently like a small boat on a calm lake and stopped perfectly right next to Lily's chair. Leo quickly retreated further into the deeper shadows, holding his breath, his heart pounding. Lily was still lost in her own world, her pencil moving lifelessly across the paper. But then, a strange object unexpectedly appeared in her peripheral vision. She froze. She slowly lowered her head. First came surprise. Her empty eyes blinked softly. What was that? It didn't belong here. It wasn't one of her dad's elaborate dishes. It was just a funny-looking donut with 2 ears, ketchup eyes, and a wide, goofy smile. The silence stretched for a moment. Leo felt like an eternity had passed. And then a miracle happened. A small sound escaped Lily's lips. At first, it was just a faint sniffle, as if she had forgotten how to do it. Then, the corner of her mouth subtly turned up, and a giggle, clear but slightly rusty from disuse, echoed in the quiet garden. Lily laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, but for her world, it was like an earthquake. From the darkness, Leo felt a pure joy spread through his body. He had done it. He had made her laugh. That clear, innocent laughter made him curious, wanting to see her expression more clearly. He unconsciously shifted slightly out of his hiding spot. The laughter also made Lily curious. Who had played this funny trick? She looked around, her eyes sweeping over the carefully trimmed bushes, then unexpectedly stopped at the dark corner of the garden where the large trash bins were. Just then, a ray of light from inside the house grazed Leo's smudged face as he peeked out. For a moment, both children froze. Lily's laughter died down, replaced by wide, surprised eyes. Leo stood stock still, his heart seeming to stop. He'd been caught. He just wanted to disappear into thin air immediately. Silence hung heavy. Leo thought she would scream, would call for an adult. He was ready to run, but Lily didn't. She just looked at him, then down at the smiling donut in her hand. She tilted her head, a child's curious gesture. Then she held up the donut slightly, like a silent question. Is this yours? Leo, too scared to speak, could only give a tiny nod. Lily looked at him for another second, then another smile. This time a shy and somewhat conspiratorial one bloomed on her lips. She said nothing, just quietly turned back to her table. She did something Leo hadn't expected. She placed a donut on the empty ceramic plate next to her. She picked up the gleaming silver fork. She quickly glanced at Leo once more, as if to make sure he was still there, still watching. Then she used the fork to carefully cut a small piece from the ear of the donut. She brought it to her mouth and began to chew slowly. She still couldn't taste anything, but now that didn't matter anymore. The meal was no longer a solitary chore. It had become a secret, a joyful game between her and the strange boy hiding in the shadows. Inside the restaurant, Julian was restless. 10 minutes had passed, too long for silence. He feared her indifference had returned, that the small miracle he'd glimpsed was just an illusion. With a sigh, he decided to go out, perhaps to clean up and put his daughter to bed. He gently pushed open the glass door, not wanting to make a sound. The first thing he saw was his cod dish, still untouched and cold. His heart sank, still the same. But then he heard a sound he hadn't heard in 6 months. Laughter, a clear, tinkling giggle. Julian's heart stopped. He froze, unable to believe his ears. His eyes darted to find his daughter. And then he saw her. Lily was holding a fork, and she was eating. She was eating something he hadn't made, a dark brown, somewhat clumsy-looking donut. And she was smiling, a genuine, radiant smile directed towards. Julian's gaze followed his daughter's and froze. Tucked away at the edge of the garden's light and shadow was a boy. A thin, smudged street child, wearing a worn-out shirt, looking at his daughter with a mix of anxiety and joy. Anger and the injured pride of a successful man surged. His first instinct was to pull out his phone. "Security?" he muttered. Leo saw the man's stern face and the phone in his hand. He knew he was in big trouble. Survival instinct kicked in, and he prepared to run. But before Julian could dial, a childish voice rang out, stopping his action. "Dad, don't!" Julian froze, turning to look at his daughter. Lily had slipped from her chair, clutching the smiling donut, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Her eyes were teary, looking at him pleadingly. "Please, Dad, let him stay." Those were the first clear, intentional words she had spoken to him about her own desire in many months. And then, through her tears, another radiant smile bloomed on Lily's face, a pleading, hopeful smile. That smile melted all the anger and defensiveness in Julian's heart. The phone in his hand suddenly felt heavy. He slowly lowered his arm. His daughter was pleading for a homeless boy, for a donut, for a smile. Silence enveloped the garden. Julian took a deep breath, trying to sort through his chaotic thoughts. He walked towards Leo. The boy flinched, his face filled with fear. "What's your name?" Julian's voice was calm and steady, devoid of anger. Leo Sear," the boy mumbled in reply. Julian looked down at the donut in his daughter's hand, then back at Leo. A crazy but hopeful idea sparked in his mind. "I have a proposition for you, Leo," he said decisively. Leo looked up, bewildered. "You can come here every day," Julian continued. "You'll help out with a few chores in the kitchen. In return, you'll have food and a place to rest." He paused for a moment, then stated the most important condition, his voice filled with urgency. "But most importantly, you must make dishes like this. You must come up with food games to convince Lily to eat." Leo froze, unable to believe what he had just heard. He looked at the powerful man in front of him, then at the little girl whose smile stretched from ear to ear. From a fugitive, he had suddenly received an unimaginable offer. Julian saw the pure joy on his daughter's face, and he knew, however crazy this decision might be, it was the rightest decision he had ever made. Weeks passed. The gleaming kitchen of the Gilded Spoon was no longer a strange place for Leo. He had his own small corner, with simple tools, quite different from the modern equipment of the other chefs. The atmosphere had also changed. Lily's giggles now occasionally echoed, mixed with Leo's playful teasing. The chefs, initially dismissive, now regarded the boy as a lucky mascot. Julian often watched from afar. He saw his daughter no longer feared meals. She happily participated in Leo's food games, though he knew her sense of taste still hadn't returned. But at least she was eating. Lily's complexion was healthier, and most importantly, a glimmer of light had begun to return to her eyes. One rainy afternoon, Leo didn't make smiling pizzas or star-shaped jellies. He quietly prepared a small pot of soup on his stove. He picked each sprig of cilantro, each basil leaf, gently crushing them in his hands to awaken their fragrance. Lily sat on her familiar high chair, curiously asking, "What game are we playing today, Leo?" Leo smiled, a somewhat distant smile. "Today isn't a game. This is my mom's soup. She always made this when it rained." He scooped a small bowl of clear, green herb soup and handed it to Lily. "Taste it and see if the story in it has any flavor, okay?" Lily obediently took the spoon. For her, this was just a familiar routine. She was used to eating without tasting anything beyond the texture of the food. She brought the spoonful of soup to her mouth, slowly swallowing, and then something unusual happened. Suddenly, her eyebrows subtly furrowed. A tiny crease appeared between her brows. She smacked her lips a few times, a strange expression on her usually impassive face. "What's wrong?" Leo asked anxiously. Lily looked up at Leo, her big eyes wide, full of confusion. "Leo, why is it? Weird?" "Weird how?" Leo's heart began to beat faster. She tilted her head, trying to find a word to describe the sensation that had just grazed her tongue. It's a little bitter. Bitter? Leo repeated, his voice trembling. Yes, Lily nodded emphatically. Just a little, like the taste of leaves. Julian, who had been standing silently by the kitchen door, observing everything, had heard it all. His whole world seemed to stop. Bitter. It was a word, a flavor, a signal, a miracle. That night, after Lily had fallen into a rare, peaceful sleep, Julian found Leo in the quiet kitchen. The boy was carefully cleaning his old pushcart, the only possession he had brought into this world. Leo, Julian called softly. The boy startled and turned around. Yes, sir. Come here. Sit down. Julian gestured to the small table, where just weeks before he had helplessly watched his daughter reject his food. They sat opposite each other in silence. Julian didn't know where to begin. Finally, he asked a simple question. That soup today. Where did you learn to make it? Leo hesitated for a moment, then began to tell his story. He spoke of his mother, her smile, and her hands always busy in the kitchen. He spoke of the pushcart as the last memento she left after a severe illness. He spoke of his wandering days, of the only joy being to see others smile when they ate the food games he invented. My mom said, Leo's voice softened, the best food isn't the most expensive. The best food is the one that can make someone smile. Julian listened, missing not a word. He looked deep into the boy's clear eyes. He saw there not only the hardships of street life, but also a pure passion for cooking, a profound understanding of the meaning of food that he, in his pursuit of Michelin stars, had inadvertently forgotten. This boy had not only saved his daughter, he was also saving the soul of the chef within him. A clear decision formed in Julian's mind. It wasn't a calculation, but an inevitable conclusion. He looked straight into Leo's eyes, his voice solemn and sincere. Leo, yes? From now on, you won't have to cook on the streets anymore. Leo froze, his eyes wide. Julian continued, each word firm and impactful. You have talent. You have a heart. I want you to get a proper education. You'll go to culinary school. And he took a deep breath before saying the most important thing. And you'll stay here, with my family. Leo couldn't believe his ears. He stammered, Sir? Are you serious? I am serious, Julian confirmed. Lily needs you, and I think I need you too. The tears that Leo had held back throughout his years of wandering could no longer be stopped. He burst into tears, not from sadness, but from overwhelming, unexpected happiness. For the first time in his life, he had a future. For the first time in his life, he had a family. News traveled faster than a dish served. The renowned chef Julian Thorne, adopting a street food vendor, immediately became a sensation in newspapers and on social media. The media was divided into two distinct camps. One side was full of skepticism and sarcasm. Sensational headlines appeared. Michelin mogul and his new PR stunt? An impulsive decision or a benevolent heart? They analyzed it as an emotional, thoughtless act, nothing more than a way to polish his image. But the other side was completely different. They saw a real-life fairy tale. Articles with titles like The Taste of Kindness, The Story of the Chef, and The Street Boy were widely shared. They admired and were moved by Julian's actions, seeing it as proof that human connection and the true meaning of food could transcend all boundaries of status and fame. Julian knew all of it. His phone constantly buzzed with notifications, interview requests, but he didn't respond. He just stood quietly in the kitchen, looking out at the garden. There, Lily was laughing radiantly, trying to mimic Leo shaping a sun-shaped cookie. His daughter's clear laughter was the only answer he needed. He understood that the public image of a perfect chef no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered now was that he was a father, and his small family had finally found joy. That bitter taste of the herb soup that day was just the beginning. It was like a small crack in a sturdy dam, from which an entire river of forgotten flavors began to rush back. Every day was a new and wondrous discovery for Lily. "Leo, look at this," she chirped one morning, her eyes sparkling as she bit into a strawberry. It's it's sour. So sour." Then a few days later, at lunch, she happily scrunched up her face as she tasted a French fry. "Salty. I can feel salty, Dad." Each basic flavor of life, sour, sweet, salty, spicy, returned one by one, not abruptly, but slowly, subtly, like old friends knocking on the door after a long journey. Each recognized flavor was a moment of joyous celebration in the kitchen. Lily wasn't just eating better. From a child who feared meals, she now became Leo's most enthusiastic little sous chef. She delighted in kneading dough, even when it covered her face and hair. She giggled as she got to decorate cookies with all sorts of colors. The kitchen, once a symbol of pain and helplessness, now became a playground bustling with the laughter of two children. She had slowly returned to her old self, a curious, active, and vibrant child. Witnessing his daughter's miraculous recovery, a profound change also occurred within Julian. He no longer spent hours studying complex recipes or arranging a mint leaf to perfect every millimeter. Instead, he was often seen sitting in a corner of the kitchen, quietly watching the two children make a mess with flour and chocolate, a warm smile always on his lips. One evening, after the restaurant had closed, he went into the kitchen and found Leo teaching Lily how to make simple donuts. Instead of just watching, he rolled up his sleeves. "Let me lend a hand," he said. "This recipe looks more complicated than lobster bisque." Leo and Lily burst into laughter. That night, the three of them made the most imperfect batch of donuts in the world. Some were burnt, others lopsided, but as they sat and ate together, passing around a jar of strawberry jam, Julian realized that this was the best meal he had ever tasted. A contented smile appeared on his lips. The Michelin stars, the accolades, all the fame of the outside world suddenly seemed insignificant. He had found the greatest wealth of his life right here, in this kitchen, seeing his daughter fully regain the taste of life and gaining a son.